Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Ampire.
Hey, baby. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Feel like I need to say something in advance of this show today. It's possible that a couple things may feel a little off, dependent how quickly the Commanders cut people today. So I want to ask them nicely, reveal all the news at noon, please. That'd be very helpful for me as we're doing a primer of Cutdown Day. And as of Monday, they hadn't done anything major. So unlike a couple teams that did release a couple names that are out there, they haven't. So, if something happens at 10:47 a.m., that might not go too well. And you may be like, hey, man, I just looked at Twitter and yeah, man. And so just don't give me that. Okay. And if you talk like that, like, I don't want to hear from you anyway. If you're Chong, don't at me about anything. So there you go.
Do the kids even know who Cheech and Chong are these days?
No,
it took me a second.
no.
Yeah. It's a bad reference by you.
5 people know what I'm talking about with Chong. Actually, I don't know. My audience probably knows who Chong is. I'm gonna go with they know who Chong is.
Okay. Normally you don't reference one of them though. That was weird. I'm just calling you out
True.
on that. Yeah.
It's true. But you knew what I was talking about, and that's the important thing right now. You knew that Chong is part of Cheech and Chong.
It took me a second, but no one says Daryl Hall or John Oates. It's usually one. It's usually both. It's usually both.
Hey, who do you like? You like Hall?
Yeah, right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Of Hall and Oates. Yeah.
You
you got to say both of them. If you don't do that, I don't know what you're talking about.
I have a tiny side thing on Hall and Oates that I heard about over the weekend. Did you know that they've never referred to themselves as Hall and Oates? Did you know this?
What do they refer to themselves as?
Daryl Hall and John Oates. Full names.
Hall and John Oates.
Every single album cover is Daryl Hall and John Oates. There's not a single album that says Hall and Oates on it. Did you know that?
They're weird. Like they're so crazy successful, and they clearly dislike each other to such a degree that they just have put up with it for so long, and it just got to the end of the line. Like their divorce is still happening, right? Like they're still refusing to work with one another and suing each other and all of that.
Yeah, like they're done. We're in the end game now. Like eventually we're going to hear about the divorce being finalized, but yeah, it's done. I mean,
this one gets split 50-50, right? Like there's no
Well, don't
we're not arguing that, are we? In court that like Hall gets more than Oates? Like we're not doing that, are we?
Don't tell them that. Like apparently Daryl wrote more than Hall or whatever, and there's a lot of Oates shouldn't perform the songs that Daryl wrote. There's a lot of this going on, and people are like,
I don't think either one of them should perform the songs if it's not them together.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I will say this though, like Daryl used to do a show though where he'd perform his songs with other artists, and that was a good show actually. Like it was a good concept, but
like, does Paul Simon do Simon and Garfunkel songs? Maybe.
I would think he does, right?
Maybe he does.
I would think so.
Does Sting do Police? Well, I mean, that's a little bit.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Does he do Police songs? Maybe.
He's got to. How does he not do Police songs? Those are all timers.
Like you haven't played Roxanne in 33 years.
Yeah,
dude.
no, yeah.
Let's go.
There's no way.
Come on, one time.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick to sports. Yeah. Today's the day. Today's the day. Cut down day. For the Commanders. Probably as aforementioned, you haven't heard anything prominent yet because I don't know who that prominent name would be. Like it would be really, really out of left field, honestly, if someone of real major namesake was released today. I'd be very surprised. Like there's There's nobody I can literally think of, and maybe they'll surprise me today, but there is like literally nobody I can think of that's like a prominent name on this team that feels unsafe to me. So that's probably why we're sitting here going, yeah, I had to do the preemptive. Well, if they say something 10 minutes before you hear this, don't at me about it. But I'll be surprised, wouldn't you? Like if some big name popped up all of a sudden that gets released today.
Well, and the follow-up question before answering that is, who's the big name? I mean, if the quote unquote big name is Jamin Davis, right? We've talked about him at length about why they would keep him or not keep him, right?
Right. I mean, like we're not like, yeah, I don't know who it would be. Like there isn't one that really comes to mind that would be a big major namesake. And in general, that kind of doesn't happen around the league either. I mean, people are like, oh, Boston Scott. And it's like, well, I mean, like, yeah, he's pretty good. He's a name. He played on a good team. He's a third running back, like what you've heard of him. Like, okay, you've used him in Madden. I get it. Like you've heard of him. All right. I understand.
On that front too, like I saw Schefter tweet out, oh, the Broncos are expected to, this was last night. They expect to release or trade Samaje Perine. I was like, that dude is still in the league, like as a big enough contributor that like it was worth a tweet. Like that's what I meant though. Like I know he was still playing. I just meant it in terms of, oh, we're tweeting about Samaje Perine in 2024. Like, I don't know who these big names are at this point.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter, because I guess there's some question whether John Mechie is going to make it with the Texans. So I saw on Twitter people trying to link any receiver here.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, like that name popped up. Would that be a big name? Like he, unfortunately, I think it was cancer, his rookie year, like derailed his rookie year. And then he came back, and they actually have a lot of receivers now. Like all of a sudden, out of the blue, they have a lot of receivers. Nico Collins, very good. Tank Dell, very good. They just got Diggs. So, I don't know if fall out of favor would be the way to go, but like he is a talent. But again, like, does that fall in line with big name? I guess maybe, because he was a high draft pick, and we haven't really seen what he can do. But, I guess that would fall into the category. Oftentimes this time of year, you're shocked if it's a name that isn't somebody that's been around the block that was on a non-guaranteed deal in the first place. And if you really, paid attention, you would realize that they were never really guaranteed anything in the first place. So I don't expect much there. So why don't we just kind of go through the position groups with them? Because, I do think there are some tough decisions for this team to make. And I really want to start here, which is interior D-line, because I do think it is the one spot that it is possible that the Commanders could seriously consider getting some kind of asset back, because they have what I think are a couple of valuable backups, John Ridgeway and Fedarian Mathis. I have a hard time buying both make the team. I think it's just going to be hard due to the numbers with Payne, Allen, Newton, certainties to make the team. How many interior defensive linemen are you going to keep? And then secondarily, like Ridgeway and Mathis are, traditional big men. And we always think that that's an important role, but think back to what is the criticism of the Dallas defense was they were more into penetrative defensive tackles, which is why I think they love Payne and Allen a lot, why they're going to love Newton, but they weren't going after the big, stout, run-stuffing type players. So not to say they're not scheme fits, but they're not prototypical players that he's looked for in the past. So numbers and that reasoning, and I know Ridgeway, I know there's interest out of him if they're not going to retain him, and I think they are. And with Mathis, he is a second-round pick, so that one I'm watching today, like what happens at that position group.
Yeah, and I mean, I think not unlike last week when Dotson got traded, right? Remember all the not the beat reporters, but the national reporters were saying, oh, these teams are going to start taking chances on wide receivers because of the pay rate now, right? Because wide receivers are expensive. Tackles have turned into the same thing. Like if you have one, luckily there's two here, but if you have one, you're paying them big money. Yeah. It's worth the risk for some of these teams to actually give up an asset to get someone that has the talent like that. So yeah, I'm with you. Like one of them should probably be traded. And I don't think they're going to get cut. I would think someone's going to take a risk by moving an asset or a low round pick or something.
Yeah. I think one of the two is going to make it. And I think that the question is going to be which one do they choose between? And I wonder if an offer helps make that decision for them or if it's clear to them. Because I will say this about Mathis, like the other day, like he's, he got hurt his rookie year. He was coming off of it his second year. But for someone his size, it's often you don't see him making a lot of plays out there. all of a sudden the other night, and I know it's a preseason game, but he was totally bought in and into it and making some plays. It was a really nice sign for me to see, like, he wants this, and I think like that was really reassuring to me. So I do think it's a tough decision. I mean, he was a high draft pick for a reason. He's the biggest guy on the field, and if it clicks for him, this is someone who could be a difference-making type player, at least as a backup for Payne and Allen. We're looking for rotational guys. Like, there's a reason why Payne and Allen didn't play in the preseason. They're trying to actually limit the load on those guys. Like, they want them at their best and at their finest because they know they're going to rely a lot on them. They need people like Mathis or Ridgeway to take snaps away from them and not feel a huge drop-off. So I'm going to see what direction they go. I think that's a really interesting one. I think the other one that's really tough, I think is a tough decision, is safety. It's going to be dependent on how many they keep. Dominique Hampton, who was a draft pick, nobody likes to cut their draft picks. When they moved him to linebacker, I think that was partially because they see him kind of like Jeremy Chin, similar build, can kind of play both ways. But I think part of it also was the linebacking core right now might have an open spot to fit him into it, and the safeties just kind of don't. Like, between Martin and Chin, who are clear starters, Butler, who's gotten a tremendous amount of run, Reeves, who is just an outstanding special teamer and a guy who's really been throwing his body around here, I think, to try to prove to this staff that he's more than just a special teamer for them. And then this emergence of Tyler Owens, the undrafted free agent, it puts Derek Forrest in question here. And this was somebody who, when they came here, Quinn and Witt, I went, oh, you're going to love that dude. Like, that dude plays like a missile. He fits exactly the prototype of the type of player they would like. Then he had a hamstring injury early in camp. Then Owens emerged. I don't know. Like, so I think they got a tough decision in that position group right now too, I think.
I think this one, though, has the opposite effect of like the D tackle wide receiver thing, though. We saw this offseason, safeties are not in demand, right? All these teams.
Yeah, Cam Curl got nothing close to what I think he and his camp thought they were going to get. So they surmised that market well. They wanted a lot of money. Peter said no. And we were all freaking out. The Cam Curl's not here. And then he went to the Rams and he got nothing even close to what he was asking for on the market.
And so what I'm getting at here is it's probably going to be easier to stash one or two of these guys on the practice squad as well, because if the market is dictating that these guys aren't getting big money and everyone was kind of content with moving on from their guys or signing someone else, like the Commanders weren't the only ones to let their safety go. There were a lot of movement when it came to safety this offseason. So I actually look at this position group and I'm with you. There's a logjam on the back end there. At least you know who the starters are. But with that logjam, I guess the other thing is you don't really have to risk losing them. I don't think safety is going to be of concern for teams to pluck other guys. So I'm actually not as concerned here if they've got to move guys on the practice squad is what I'm getting at.
The other thing they can do, and they could try this, and it's risky, but like everybody values their own guys and they're like, you can't let him go. He's going to end up getting picked up by somebody else. But Tyler Owens is an undrafted rookie free agent, and he's looked great in this camp, and he's probably earned a spot. But if you feel like there's just too many people and you don't want to lose someone like Defoe, then maybe you release him now, tell him you are definitively on our practice squad. You're going to get called up in a second if we have an injury. And oh, by the way, if another team comes calling, tell us and we'll do something about it.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling like that's a possibility here with him. Possibility.
Yeah. No,
the other one on defense to me is there going to be a surprise at corner? Because it seems to me like Forbes, Sandra St. Juice, Michael Davis, and I think Igbenogany are pretty much locks, I think. But Tariq Castro-Fields has kind of come along. I don't know how they feel overall about this group. I know how the outside feels about this group just in general, but I don't know how they specifically feel about it. So is there a surprise there that Castro-Fields gets a job over somebody? I don't know. Secondarily, this is the group that I'm watching big time. If somebody pops up off waivers from another team that they think is an upgrade, that would not surprise me at all if there is one or even two new corners that pop up here because there is a quote unquote surprise release from somebody else.
Yeah, this is the group that whenever the cuts come, I'm going to look at the group and say, okay, and then I'm going to expect 2 to 3 names that I don't see on there to be part of the group moving forward. This is the one there. I think whatever the first round of cut is, at 4:00, whatever that is, 2 or 3 names in this group specifically are not actually going to be listed is my concern here. And that's over the next 2 weeks, really, not just the lead up to the first week of the game or 1st week of the season.
I'm going to be watching this one closely. I think this one's fluid for a couple of weeks because teams also like the initial, this has come down to there's a first 53 and then there's changes after waivers. And then a couple teams play games with a couple of guys and wait a couple of days. And there's a second wave. And then after the first game, teams make maneuverings because they're trying to avoid IR situations with people. And then they make moves and you have to like adjust to that. And Dan Quinn mentioned out loud, we don't ever want to be number 2 in the waiver claim again, but here we are, we need to take advantage of it. So they are open for business and things are going to happen here. So we're trying to guess what those things are at this point.
Speaking of the waiver wire, did you hear Gerard Mayo on Boston Sports Radio yesterday about the waiver wire thing?
No, what did he say?
This one was good because Quinn said, "Oh, we don't ever want to be second again." Well, Mayo, I guess it was WEI, I think, who does their post game pressers or post game call-ins, and he goes, "Yeah, well, we're number 3 in the waiver wire, and our starting guard and tackle might not be on the team right now." Oh. He said 2 starting linemen might not be on the team right now, and everybody was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And then all I could think of was, well, if you don't have 2 starting linemen and you're looking for one of them has to get through Washington too. And I'm like, if there's one good enough, they're coming here.
You better hope we don't like them.
That's what I was saying. I'm
right.
like,
you better hope we don't like them because that's my next topic.
Yeah, right.
So I'm watching Chris Paul, who they've asked to be basically a tackle the last couple of weeks. I think he's done pretty well there. And I think he's earned a position as a swing tackle, backup guard, whatever it may be. But same thing. Same, Gerard. Same. I think
right.
If the right, offensive lineman, either position pops up, maybe not center. That doesn't feel like a need, but either position that pops up, yeah, I think we're in that business too. And like, who knows? Do we like the same players that they like? I don't know. But, if Peters gets any whiff he's got the second one. He can choose them. So same. I feel the same way. The corner group, potentially the receiver group, maybe the running back group, and definitively the offensive line group. That's all I've been saying for a couple of weeks. I think 3 to 5 guys are on other teams right now that are going to end up being on our roster this year. That's what I think.
No, I agree. And it was just funny hearing Mayo say that like they're looking for 2 starters essentially. And I'm like, guy, one or both of them ain't getting past us. So good luck with that on your end because this team's looking for the same thing. Like,
did you hear his other one on Drake May where he called him the second best quarterback on his roster?
No, I didn't see that.
Someone asked, because Jacoby got hurt at the preseason game.
Yeah.
And they asked him, in light of his injury, like, is Drake May definitively going to start, which I would think would be obvious. And he basically couched it by saying, well, yeah, he goes, because he's the second best quarterback on our roster.
Wow. All right. I mean,
yeah.
I guess he did. That could also be he didn't want to disrespect Brissett. I mean, I could see that. I mean, it's not totally wrong, I guess,
sure.
But could have said it differently. Could have
Patriots
not pulled
Twitter's not pleased. Let me put it that way.
That's a Ron move. That's a Ron statement.
It is. Yeah.
It's
guys. Yeah. That's his guys moment. Let's see. 5 or 6 receivers. We'll see. I think it's going to be 6. I think Jamison Crowder is going to make it now because I think he's the primary punt returner. I just haven't seen any evidence otherwise from anybody else. And now that Jahan is no longer here, I think it kind of opened the door to make those decisions easier. It's another position group that I'll watch. Does someone pop up that surprises them? I do feel like if it's a prominent player like Mechie, I think you got to pull off a deal, to actually get him before he hits waivers, because I think no one's going to want him to hit waivers. So if it's someone like that people want to take a shot on and are willing to give an asset up for, then like Jahan, like we weren't going to waive him, I don't think. But if we had, team 1 would have picked him up, like that's the way it would have gone. So we'll see how it goes from here. I'm over the surprises. I have a hard time buying the guys at the bottom end of it, like Tremaine and Tinsley. I'm having a hard time seeing them win a job, but maybe the coaches feel differently. We'll find out. I thought early in camp, Tremaine was incredible. He was making catch after catch after catch. I just didn't see it in the games. And maybe that's not fair to him, but I feel like they've got a pretty deep stable of wide receivers that they might be looking to improve on the open market. And I'm not sure that, that they're going to take the developmental guy and put him on the 53. If any of them end up on the practice squad, I wouldn't be surprised at all, but that's where I kind of am on that one. Tight end, I think the question is just 3 or 4. Do they keep Cole Turner? Because it's pretty obvious who the top 3 are. Ertz, Sinnott, Bates are locks, in my opinion. Do they keep a 4th? I believe they'll lose Turner to somebody else. I don't think he'll clear waivers. I think someone will pick him up. I think if you release Yankoff, I think you could probably get him to the practice squad. But so that's the choice you have to make here with Turner. I do think it's possible you will lose him if he hits the open market.
I think that's fine, though. I mean, this is a position where you only have one guy on the field for a majority of the time, and every single one of those guys ahead of him has a legitimate role. Ertz is going to do a little bit of everything. Sinnott's going to be a pass catcher. Bates is amazing as a blocker, and at the end of the day, Turner doesn't do anything better than those 3 guys. So, this is one of those ones I'm afraid to lose him, but also I get it. How much can you wait on a guy for developing?
He's the one that I look at and I go, if they do waive him and they think they're going to get him to the practice squad, I think that's the one that might get picked up. So I think that could be problematic. I want to go back to receiver just for a moment. I know everybody's freaking out and thinking Martavis Bryant's going to make the team. I'm going to stick with where I was yesterday and just say 20% and a low percentage of it. I kind of don't see it for how long he's been here, but I do think he's worth putting on the practice squad and developing, seeing how it goes, for at least another few weeks, a month. And then maybe, obviously he fits a profile. It's very different than anybody else that we have here. And if he turns his career back around where he looks like the player he was, 5-6 years ago, then I see a route to him being up on this particular roster. I just think, why do it now? He's been out of the league. No one had signed him. He just came here 2 weeks ago. I don't have any fear of losing him to another team. I think we can get him to the practice squad. So that's what I think is going to happen with him. And the last one, I think, is just this question. Who's running back 3? Obviously, it's B-Rob and Eckler. And then, I think they've been working Allen out there because they're looking for some kind of explosiveness. I don't know where Chris Rodriguez fits into this. He got a lot of opportunities the other night against New England. I know they like Michael Wiley a lot. He's scored a couple touchdowns in the preseason. He's showing some speed. This is another position group I'll watch. Who gets cut? Who's available out there? Is there someone they feel that they like a little bit better than who they have? I think that's a spot to kind of watch here too. Maybe it's McNichols. Do they keep more than 3 on the roster? I at this juncture, I don't know why they would, but let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would point to with Rodriguez is he actually has game film, right? He was pretty good that last quarter of last season when he had to be used behind a pretty questionable offensive line. That's my only argument kind of for him. Other than that, though, I don't think any of these other guys have kind of grabbed the position, when it's all said and done. So I'm kind of with you. This could be one that I see them plucking someone off the waiver wire to be running back 3.
All right, that's our little preview of Cut Down Day. We'll get to Jerry Jones going off and CeeDee Lamb getting cash next. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. We've got everything from cleats to Sambas, dunks, and more. Plus, the hottest looks from Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. Find your first day fits in-store or online at dicks.com.
All right, welcome back. Brave Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So Jerry got pushed into doing something that I assumed he was going to do anyway, but he's been getting tagged by the media, and I think rightly so, over the last few weeks and few months, because he unwisely said the team was going all in when they had a terrible cap situation and had some big decisions to make, and they really didn't have any flexibility to do anything. But when he said that, the people who don't know this start yelling at him and saying, you're not going all in. Then it got to the point where he started asking, is he cheap? What in the world is going on here? Because they're not signing their stars. And he gets to kind of shut everybody up, at least on CeeDee Lamb, because he made him one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So that one's closed and done. And I never thought that they weren't going to sign him. I think Dak is a different situation. I think Dak has got a lot of leverage on them. I think Dak is someone they don't want to give that amount of money to for whatever reason. They don't want to do it. I don't totally disagree with that, but like they have their own reasons. But this one, I'm not surprised. This is one of those where you may not like that this is the market value of this guy at this position, but if you don't sign him, somebody else will tomorrow. In fact, 10 other teams will do it.
No, my theme of this whole offseason has been the top 1% of NFL players realize that they're in the top 1%. So you have CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Trent Williams started yesterday too. That one is finally coming to a head, which I'm surprised people haven't talked about more. But you're starting to see this now. The players that know they can get paid do just that. They hold out. Like, we do not have these weird in-between players like we used to 10, 15 years ago, where you'd be like, who's holding out? Why is he holding out? Like, he doesn't deserve that contract. Now the guys that know that they're going to get paid, they do this. And with CeeDee Lamb, my whole thing was, had Jerry just gotten this done literally 2 months ago, the price would have been different.
It would have been lower.
He had to sign him after Jefferson got his money. So he had to sign him to a very slightly lower, but around the same number as Jefferson. This is what I didn't understand with Jerry. He should have done this 2 months ago, and it already would have come around and looked way better. And so I think that's why he's been raked over the coals over the last month, because everyone's kind of saying, dude, the market's the market, and you don't have another wide receiver in waiting that can replace him. So what are you 100%. Waiting for?
Well, in reality, this is a top 5 receiver. Like,
yes, yeah, absolutely, yes.
He's become that. A couple years ago, I was like, he's good, not great. He really developed last year, where he was top 5 receiver. And so is what it is, guy. Sorry, you got to do it.
Right.
So in the midst of all of this, and we were talking about this last week, I'm like, did he lose his fastball? Like, what is going on with this guy? Like, he's not signing these guys. He's messing up these negotiations. It's just costing him more in the end. Like, I don't get it. He keeps saying he wants to go all in, but he's not going after anybody.
Dallas Cubs.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's going on here? And he did an interview, and I saw these quotes pop up, and I thought for sure they were fake. Like, there was like no way that they were real. But I think it was Clarence Hill, who's covered the team forever for Dallas, either Dallas Morning News or Fort Worth Star Telegram or one of those papers down there. But he's been around the team forever. And I'm just going to read one of the quotes that he said. I'm not going to show it because I'll get in trouble, by showing it. He goes, essentially asked, like, you're in your 80s now, and people are asking you about running the team. Don't you think, maybe it might be time to turn it over to somebody? And his quote was, I've done it all. If anybody can figure out how to get this S done, I can figure out how to get it done. So hell no, there's nobody that could effing come in here and do all these contracts and be a GM better than I can. That is, and I'm sure he said after that, and you could print that.
Yep. 100%. This is, who's looking down on him being proud is Al Davis. That's an Al Davis quote right there of just, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. I'm the owner, and I don't think anyone else can do it better than me. And this is how it's going to be.
I'll say this too for him. Like, I know they haven't won the big one in a very long time. They've been really good, like, the last few years. Like, people poo-poo 12-win teams as if, what did he luck into that? Because he didn't. And I love to criticize them more than anybody. And I love when they screw up. I love it more than anybody. But I knew last year, I'm like, they're a team to beat in the NFC. Just go look at the roster they put together. They typically draft well. They typically coach well. Like, we're going to see this year because we rated their defensive staff. But I don't know, man. Like, I think everybody came at them because this year felt weird. And it felt a little reset-y, but they're staring down the Lamb contract, the restructure with Dak, Micah Parsons, and all he's basically saying is, I got to figure some of this stuff out because we can't keep everybody, and y'all know it. And so stop calling me cheap or telling me I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out on the fly. That said, this CeeDee Lamb contract cost them more than it should have. The Dak thing has been mishandled twice. This feels very Kirk. Mishandled twice by them. It's just getting more expensive by the day. There's nothing they clearly don't want to do it, but there's nothing they can do about it. Trey Lance just threw 5 interceptions the other day, so he ain't coming to his rescue. Jer is somewhere in the middle of this where I hear him on the get off my lawn, and there's a little bit of, but your lawn isn't as manicured as it used to be, dude. Just telling you to cut it a little bit because it doesn't look right anymore.
There's also the fact, besides the Dak thing, everyone likes to talk about how Green Bay has had 3 franchise quarterbacks in a row, right? And they've drafted 2 of them in the first round and they let them sit, right? Well, Dallas might have the luckiest back-to-back ever. I don't think I'm going hyperbole there. They had an undrafted rookie free agent, Tony Romo, sit and develop for how many years?
Yeah.
And he steps in and is the franchise. And then they draft Dak in the 4th round, and he gets to play accidentally when Romo gets hurt.
That's right.
I can't think of a more lucky back-to-back hit on franchise quarterbacks. And Romo, had he won one Super Bowl, I think would be in the Hall of Fame or have his number retired.
When the draft popped up, it was I couldn't believe this stat. They hadn't used a first-round pick on a quarterback from Troy Aikman.
Exactly. And I'm like, and they've been so good.
Considering how good they've been.
Yes.
They haven't won the big ones, and that's funny. Me and Stephen A. Smith have that in common. It's very funny. But they have consistently circled the wagons and put together very good teams. They've drafted very well. Look at some of these players that they have on their team. They're not going to be bad this year. I don't know if they're going to be. I can't see. Arrows are pointing down. I can't see them being as good.
Sure.
But they're not bad. But I love that Jerry pulled out the howitzer. You could print that.
Can I have a hot take on this one? I think Jerry is a better draft GM than Roseman is.
Ooh. I'll have to get some Philly fans on for that one. I got to think about that. Let me do a rundown of that. I need to do a little research and go look and find out. Roseman on the free agent market, watch out.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm not saying that though. But drafting, have you heard the Roseman thing now? What he does?
No.
All Roseman does, this is my favorite take ever, and even Philly fans are starting to come around on this. Roseman is like the anti-Ron, but all he does is he looks at all of the best players available when they're drafting and picks them. And then that way, the day after the draft, everyone goes, oh, he drafted perfectly. He took the best player available every single time, but he's not looking and actually scouting into some of these picks. So they needed a corner, right? So he took the 2 best corners in the 2nd round, and everyone's going, oh, that's great. They needed them. But then 2, 3, 4 years down the line, no one actually says he did a bad draft when those guys don't pan out. So
I gotta get my boy Kincaid or Nagandi on about this.
Okay.
Remind me of that when we have them on, because we always have them on when we play the Eagles. I'll ask them, do you think Jerry Jones is a better draft GM than Howie Roseman, and see if they're going to be honest about it? Let's see what they'll say about that.
The best part about this is it finally hit the mainstream. Mina Kimes the other day, when the Dotson trade happened, she literally tweeted, Howie's never going to escape the name allegations. He only knows guys that have been drafted in the 1st round because that's all he watches. So I was yes, it's finally hitting even some of the smart mind. And Mina did say, she goes, I still am a fan of Dotson. I believe in Dotson, but she was he's still not going to escape, these allegations now. So
one more Dallas adjacent story before I get to, I'm going to play a preview of a new podcast I did with the Commanders with London Fletcher called Booth Review that we're going to do every Monday for them. I'll play, so you'll hear from London in a few minutes. But how about Deion Sanders, huh? Oh, man. So Deion earlier this year shut down some local CBS reporter because he was mad about something, not what that reporter did, but something that CBS did, which Stephen A. Smith was suggesting had something to do with taking a scoop away from a black reporter and giving it to a white reporter. And I'd have to know more about what he's talking about, but I don't know. Anyway, the latest one was there's some local columnist for Denver Post, Rocky Mountain News, something like that there. And this guy goes at Deion relatively hard and gives him nicknames, right?
Which are great, by the way.
Which are not mean, but they're kind of Lavero-ish nicknames. Lavero.
That's what I
goes
said.
down this road.
I said it on my show yesterday.
Yeah,
I said this
Lavero
is a little
does
Lavero. Yeah,
He
yeah.
was calling Snyder Skipper Dan and all that, like that type of
Honest
like
Ted, those things.
Yeah. Just needling. The needling nicknames that he does. And Dion basically is like, I'm never taking a question from you ever again, and shut him down. And he's dead serious. Like, it's not a joke. And he's just like, I'm out. And the reaction to it from the general media, Feinbaum, of course, this is chum for him. He gets to scream and yell. And then everybody in the SEC is like, yeah, he's a fraud. So it's like perfect for his audience. Then I saw Heather Dinich, who's a straight down the middle reporter, basically write a piece going like, this is utterly ridiculous. And was like, for years, I would scream at Joe Paterno that your quarterback stinks. And he took the question, like he always at least took the question every week. And Dion, the thin skin part of it is, I think, what's getting me about him. Like, if you want to go out and you want to basically constantly seek attention, then I think you have to know, and he's lived a life of this, that there's going to be criticism that comes along with that. And as long as it's fair, and maybe some of this is just childish and that's why he doesn't like it, but as long as it's fair criticism, it's fair game, man. And the fact that like he's doing these things kind of screams to me that he knows his team isn't going to be very good. And it's almost like he's trying to get out in front of that before everybody starts saying like, see, this guy can't run a real big program in a real big conference. That's what it screams to me, actually.
This one, I have two gripes. He asked that reporter the reporter asked him some kind of question. I forget what the actual question was. Then he goes, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you like this? And then Dion literally said, I'm not going to answer the question until you tell me. And it's like, dude, don't like intimidate a reporter in front of everybody. Like, pull him to the side if you have something to say. It happens all the time in sports where you say, you know what? I think you're going a little hard at us. And you have that side conversation. But because he's Dion.
Saban used to do it. Remember? He would, like, when he'd get a couple, like, we'd always play those clips because he'd get a question or two that he hated. And then he would just rip the reporter. But you know what? I never heard that the reporter lost their credential or was told they could never ask a question again. They were allowed to show up the next week, and it was just back to business as usual, which is typical. I mean, like, we made fun of Ron forever. Guys. I'm sure he wasn't like Jason Wright was very unhappy with Scott, but like Scott didn't lose his credential over it. He was allowed to show up and ask the questions again. Not that he should have, but and this is where like I've seen Lavero at camp. Lavero goes after that team. They give him his credential to show up. He can ask questions if he wants. Like, get over it, guys. And for Dion, it's just like, it just screams to me that he is feeling pressure of it's actually not going to go that well this year. And that's why he's doing this. It's like, I'm going to blame the media when I lose. It's very Trump, actually. I'm going to blame the media when I lose.
There's two other parts to this as well. One of them is you wanted the circus pal. So like, you get these guys coming to camp. Like Saban, I think the reason why he would sound off and then everything was fine because Saban basically had the 33rd NFL team. He was team 33. So like
also didn't want the circus. Like he actually he was like Belichick. He came from the less media is better.
Yes.
Like, he didn't want that. Dion is not doing that. Dion, and I understand why, he went to a place that's not Alabama. He's trying to build it into something, and he knows that it's his brand that's going to make or break it. So he had to put his brand on the line. And I totally understand that. But, look, like the media is free to criticize when it's fair. And when you go, it's one thing to put your brand on the line and be humble about where it is. He basically ran out there and screamed, we're going to be great quickly.
Right. Exactly.
That's your fault, dude.
Yeah.
Like that's your fault for setting yourself up that way.
The other part of this, by the way, and that I actually think is like the degrading part is, he didn't have his credential taken away. They literally said out loud, oh, he can still cover the team. He just can't ask any questions.
Because they can't. That's why. Because then they're going to get into a problem with the organization. And then all of a sudden the school's going to be in some kind of fight that they don't need to be in legally that you'll never hear about. But like, then the college football writers get involved. It's just too ridiculous to take the credential away. But he could say, I'm not answering your questions. Or he could just say, you can ask it, but I could just say no comment or ignore you. That's fair game for him to do that.
Right, but that's what I'm getting at on this one is like they're doing we would ban you, but we kind of know that's going to open up a whole other can of worms. So we're just going to answer your questions.
Yeah. Come on, Dion. Come on, man.
Not good.
I want to love you. These little moments, it makes it hard to love you. I want to love you. All right, let me take a quick break. When we come back, I'll give you a preview of Booth Review, a new podcast that I'm doing with my radio partner in the booth on Sundays, London Fletcher. Brad, watch the show. He's Pan 630 Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
All right, before we go today, I want to give you a special sneak preview. It's not even really a preview because the podcast is actually out, but through the Commanders, I've started a new weekly podcast with my broadcast partner, London Fletcher. We, along with Logan Paulson, call the games. Finished off the preseason, and we just launched a new show called Booth Review that you're going to be able to see on YouTube and get wherever you get your podcasts. So we're going to spend an hour each week breaking down the game and looking ahead to the next game, and it's going to be awesome. We did a special preview one up in New York after the joint practice, and then we did our first official one yesterday off of the end of the preseason against New England, and we got into like literally everything. How did Drake May look? What do you think of Jaden Daniels moving forward? Some of the roster decisions that need to be made by 4 p.m. today, including all the different groups that we're focusing on, like cornerback, interior defensive line, safeties, running back, wide receivers, offensive line. We got into literally all of it. And then London got into all these different stories of when he was coming up as an undrafted free agent and kind of telling stories about all of that. So here is a sneak preview of Booth Review with my man, London Fletcher. One more person for last night. We have to give the flowers to Trace McSorley, who grew up in Ashburn, right? And like we were talking about earlier, I feel like I have the greatest job in the world in broadcasting. I get to call the games of this incredible franchise that's 90-plus years old that I grew up going to games at RFK at, and I wouldn't want any other job. And it's amazing. Every time I get to do it, I'm privileged and honored to do it. He got to put on black, but burgundy and gold, right?
Yeah. And last week you wore burgundy and gold.
Yeah, and there he was.
I don't even know what color we wore in Miami.
I don't remember now either. I think so.
Was it burgundy
tops?
No, I think it was white. I don't know.
Like I said, information dump on Monday when it's over. You just forget it all.
White in Miami.
I don't remember.
White burger.
We'll have to look it up. Anyway,
long time ago.
He's in a home game, leading 2 fourth-quarter touchdown drives. Trucks a cornerback, gets the sideline going nuts for him. So whatever his future is, here or not here, whatever it may be, like I know he's been around the league. I know he's been drafted. He's played for a number of teams. So this wasn't new to be on an NFL field, but there had to be something to putting on those colors, walking into that stadium. And I know it's a preseason game, but leading game-winning fourth-quarter drives in the burgundy and gold for a kid who grew up in Ashburn, that must have been amazing last night.
Yeah, it was. I got to interview him last night on the post-game show. And I asked him, about that. What was it like for you growing up out here in Ashburn and being able to play a game, in the at Commander Stadium for your hometown team? And being able to perform the way he performed. And he's like, man, it was a surreal type of moment for him to be able to do that. There was a picture posted recently today on social media of him as a kid at a training camp, just being at one of the Redskins training camp back then, but being at one of our training camps. And that's to be able to do that.
He's got a picture with you? Are you signing an autograph for him?
I did have a teammate who I signed an autograph for when I was playing. He was a kid back in the day. That showed you how old I was, still playing. But for him to have that moment and play the way he played, I know that had to feel really good.
I mean, for this preseason, what I'm going to remember is him, doing what he did. He'd been here for 2 days when he played in the first game, shows up here. That moment where he trucked this cornerback and the sideline goes crazy. So here's, think about the first preseason game. Tress Way, who's been here longer than anybody else, might go in the Ring of Fame, one of the best punters this organization's ever had. Great guy, too. He throws his body on the line in the second half of a preseason game against the Jets, and the place goes nuts. And here's a guy who's been here a week, and it matters to him. And I think that's the infectiousness that I think we hope we're seeing across the board. The guy who shouldn't be throwing his body around to the other guy doing it in the uniform. You know, that's what I think Dan Quinn and Adam Peters want. That's what we want to see. And it was amazing to see kind of, here's somebody who's fighting for a role in the NFL. Here's another guy who is perfectly safe because he's the only punter on the roster, and he's annually a Pro Bowl punter. And they're doing the same thing at the same points in time in preseason games that don't count in the standings. Tells you everything you need to know what's going on here.
There's a saying, they don't count, but they matter. Yeah, they don't count from a record standpoint, a big picture regular season record, but they matter. Every time you step between those white lines, it matters. You talk about autograph. You're autographing your work, good or bad. With every single performance you have, you're putting your autograph, your signature. You're saying, hey, this is my work. Are you proud of that work? Or are you like, that wasn't my best? That's the standard that you have to play to. Understanding, I'm signing my name to this work, this performance. Am I going to be proud of it?
All right, so that is just a sample of Booth Review, hour-long show. You can check it out on the Commanders YouTube page. You can get it anywhere you get your podcast. Booth Review with me and London Fletcher, who now apparently goes by Big Fletch. That gets explained in the first episode as well. And I'm hoping the Commanders will give us a clip every week to play here on this show so you can hear our thoughts as we break down the game after each Sunday. Our next one will be next week, even though there is no game, as we kind of project ahead and look ahead to week 1 against Tampa. All right, cut down day is coming. Just a couple final thoughts here as we just have a few hours left before the team needs to get down to what I would just describe as the initial 53-man roster for Washington this year. Dan Quinn has more than hinted. In fact, he's basically outwardly said that this team is going to be looking to bolster its roster, as any team would, but this team, obviously, with all the newness and different players and an obvious vulnerabilities on this roster, they're going to be looking to try to make some additions here after the first initial 53. It's my gut that there's 3 to 5 players that aren't on this roster that probably will be added later this week once waivers clear, or they may pick up players that have been waived. Secondarily, there's always this kind of second wave after week 1 where teams protect players through week 1 and then try to make some maneuverings after week 1. So the positions that I'm watching pretty closely here, does a corner pop up that makes sense to them? Does a wide receiver pop up that makes sense to them? Does a tackle or guard, for that matter, backup variety who could project into a starting role at some point, does that make any sense to them? Does anyone pop up there? And I'm going to watch running back too. Listen, I've been very pleased with what Michael Wiley did. They've been profiling Kaz Allen, trying to find a role for him on special teams and out of the backfield as well. But if someone with some kind of explosive talent ends up hitting the open market, that really wouldn't surprise me. Is the team I think they feel good about their skill position players, but I think they know they are missing kind of the explosiveness of specific positions. And so if someone kind of pops up that just kind of catches their eye that they want to take a chance on, I wouldn't be surprised. And the running back room, it would seem to me, is a spot where they could pass a couple of players they like through waivers, definitively get them on the practice squad, and look around and see if someone who's got some pop, shows up on the waiver wire and gives them an opportunity to upgrade the position group as well. And obviously we'll be watching if they make any moves themselves. Do they move anybody over the next few hours? And we'll have a full recap of it tomorrow. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.